On the cold evening of Monday, January 11th, 2010, in Starkville, Mississippi, 26-year-old Lester L.J. Jones Jr. had set plans to visit his fraternity brothers in Jackson, Mississippi for a regular meetup. It was supposed to be a typical drive for Lester, from Starkville to Jackson. He even stopped past his mother's home in Tupelo to visit his brother before his trip to Jackson. LJ had it all planned out, but something happened somewhere in between. We do know what was supposed to be a quick stop at a local Exxon, now Shell, gas station, at the Sprint Mart in Flowood, only 15 minutes away from Jackson, turned to be the last known location of LJ on record. There is footage of him there, but somehow things go dark. Until there was an odd discovery, a cell phone found in the men's restroom. It was an oddity because the phone belonged to LJ, but he had already left the gas station and assumingly en route up the road to Jackson. After 15 years of questions, mystery, calls, and theories, it makes you question if someone had a hand in this. LJ decided to leave on his own volition, or something else like an accident. Since 2010, there has been no trace left of LJ or his 2002 Ford Expedition. Both just vanished. Many people have speculated different theories, and we will delve into each theory with facts, maps, and possibilities. We will start with who LJ was before he went missing, go into the case details, break down every case element, analyze the most burning theories, and close with my opinion. Though the details are slim, with very little coverage, a case like this deserves a fresh look, a new perspective, and answers. This is the Missing Found podcast. I'm your host, Jaden Harlow. Before we get into the case, I have a few details to share about the show. The Missing Found is an investigative true crime podcast focusing mainly on unsolved missing person cases in the Black community. The cases that I cover have either gone cold, have little to no media coverage, or have gone without conclusion. You can follow the show on Instagram at The Missing Found or on Medium at The Missing Found to read our original script. I also would like to mention that we have a case suggestion form in the show notes or description box that you can complete to submit your case suggestions that are of the Black and missing. I'm happy to announce that we have a YouTube membership that's now available for you to become a member in the evidence room to gain early releases, priority replies from me, and much more that's exclusive for members only. The show is available on all major podcast platforms, including Apple, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. For Apple Podcasts, we ask that you give us a 5-star rating to help the show reach a broader audience to help find our missing. To access all things of The Missing Found, you can visit our website, themissingfound.com. I ask that you please like, share, comment your thoughts on this case, and subscribe if you found value and want to continue the journey with me to finding our missing and learning about their stories. This is case episode 32, The Disappearance of Lester L.J. Jones. So who was Lester Jones? Lester Raymond Jones Jr., or LJ, was born on November 26, 1983 in Mississippi. Though there aren't much details on Lester's early life, he is described as respectful, kind, loved to tell jokes and make people laugh. He had a great relationship with his mother, while his father lived in California, and him having one sibling, his brother. LJ was also a devoted Christian, and that was important to him and helped develop his values and standard for his life. LJ was a scholar. He attended Mississippi State University. In early 2010, he was only months away from completing his master's in biomedical engineering. While at MSU, he was a part of the Omega Psi Phi fraternity, where he formed a brotherhood with some of the members, which are some of the friends that he was headed to see on that evening of January 11th. The case details. On the morning of Monday, January 11th, 2010, LJ left from his city in Starkville and went to take an hour-long drive to visit his mother and brother in Tupelo, Mississippi, before he embarked on his 3-hour trip to Jackson from Tupelo, which sets his trip at a total of 4 hours. As far as we know, at that time, there was no cause for concern. The visit was a typical visit, LJ expressed excitement to his brother about going to Jackson, and everything seemed normal. LJ eventually left his family's home and got on the road. Now, the details are scarce on what occurred during his time on the road or even which route he took from Tupelo. We do know that nearly 3 hours into his trip, at 10:18 p.m., he stopped at an Exxon gas station convenience store, Sprint Mart, located at 4214 Lakeland Drive, Flowood, Mississippi, parked, entered the store, used the restroom, walked out, entered his SUV, then left into the night in the direction of Jackson, which was only 15 minutes from his end destination. From there, something happened. He never reached Jackson, as far as we know, and no one has seen or heard from LJ, nor his 2002 blue Ford Expedition. LJ's mother tried to get in contact with him, but she was unsuccessful. She could not reach him for several days. His father even tried calling him, but there was no answer, so he left a voicemail. He received calls from his frat brothers, but there was no answer. LJ was then reported missing on Wednesday, January 20th. It was discovered that LJ left his phone at the Sprint Mart in the men's restroom. It was turned in by a customer at the store. And it's not clear exactly how the phone was found, whether it was traced by Starkville PD or if an employee from Sprint Mart had contacted law enforcement and said that he had his phone in their possession. LJ was known to misplace his phone, so this didn't come across to some as odd. Law enforcement was able to check surveillance footage at the store and saw that LJ was in fact present at this gas station convenience store. It also showed that he was riding in his vehicle, seemingly alone, and him not acting peculiar. That proved he was alive, well, and they can build a timeline around that sighting. LJ was examined in the footage, but there were no oddities found. He was seen leaving the gas station in the direction of Jackson, but things go dark. With his phone being left at his last known location, it hindered any other movement thereafter, or any knowledge of any movement thereafter. This is where we're left in the case. Next, I want to break down the case elements to analyze all of what we know and all of what we don't know. So, the facts. The case details are slim, and there really just isn't anything to hold on to that may have a direct correlation as to why or what took part in LJ going missing. One interesting discovery is that before LJ stopped at Sprint Mart, he had an 8-minute conversation with his frat brother. There are no public details on who this frat brother is, but the conversation did happen. Now, the oddity about this call is that the frat brother, assumingly, one LJ was going to visit on his travels to Jackson, has said he had not spoke with LJ. This was stated by him in 2 interviews. From there, he lawyered up. He then admitted that he did in fact speak with LJ. What makes this interesting is why would he lie? 8 minutes is a decent length call. We can only assume what the details of the call was, as it has never been publicly communicated. The call could have been a check-in call, whereas his frat brother called to get his location since he may have been the one to host LJ. It could have been a discussion about something they've spoken about in the past, or even asking LJ to pick up something along the way, or maybe a meetup. We just don't know. The details of this call may have been communicated to law enforcement after the frat brother actually came forward with confirmation that he did speak with LJ, but it is just not publicly discussed. Now, you're wondering, just like I am, why would he lie about this interaction if it was a harmless call on 2 occasions? Then he lawyered up after this. It makes you think he has information or hiding something. Though it seems pointless to attempt to hide this detail because it's easily traceable on LJ's phone. We also have to look at what if it wasn't the frat brother who spoke with LJ from his phone, maybe someone else. Again, this is information that law enforcement would have and perhaps keeping it close to the case. So let's get into the facts. The forgotten phone at Sprint Mart. One thing I should mention is that I can't seem to locate the video on LJ walking into or exiting the Sprint Mart. There's only a freeze frame that shows him in his truck driving away. Assumingly, it's him driving since no other reports refuted that. It was said that he walked in by himself and left by himself. If there was anyone present with him, they had to have been in the car. This is a detail that has no confirmation, so we can't assume that to be true. As far as we know, LJ was alone and simply stopped at the gas station convenience store Sprint Mart to use the restroom. No purchase was made, nor did he get any gas, as far as we know. If he did not get gas, this lets me know that at some point he had already stopped and got gas elsewhere on his travels, since he didn't assumingly refuel at the Exxon he stopped at. LJ leaving his phone in the bathroom did strike me as odd, but he could have been tired. His brain could have been foggy since he was driving for a long distance, and it was dark. He may have walked into the restroom, set his phone down in the stall, used the restroom, left out of the stall or urinal, washed his hands, left out of the Sprint Mart, then drove in the direction to reach Jackson. By the time he realized he left it, he could have been distracted, panicked, or attempted to find it once it dawned on him, thinking he dropped it somewhere and someone took it. He may have remembered that he left it in the men's restroom. Losing your phone is always a touchy thing. It almost brings this overwhelming feeling because there is a chance someone took the phone, which means you would be without a phone and you would have to purchase another one. Couple this with being on a road trip. Thankfully, a customer who entered the restroom after him spotted the phone and gave it to the manager or clerk on duty at Sprint Mart. After days of no calls being answered and voicemails, on January 20th, his mother filed a missing persons report. From there, Flowood and Starkville PD opened their investigation. Though LJ disappeared 15 years ago, cell phones were a necessity, especially when traveling. Even before he stopped at Exxon and Sprint Mart, we know he had a conversation with his frat brother or with someone using the frat brother's phone. I will discuss this more in my theories and common theories that have been online regarding LJ's disappearance. So the next fact, safe travels. As I've mentioned, LJ lived in Starkville, Mississippi with his roommate. He then traveled through Tupelo to briefly stop by to see his brother and mother at their home. LJ then left and continued on to Jackson. In between his drive to Jackson, he stopped in Flowood at the gas station to go to Sprint Mart to take a restroom break. Though not mentioned anywhere in the details, it is likely that he stopped somewhere to get food, a snack, gas, or to use the restroom. For him to have been seen on surveillance at Sprint Mart at 10:18 p.m., we can assume that he had to have left Tupelo at around 6-something with stops or 7-something without stops. Possibly. It was January in Mississippi. On Monday, January 11th, 2010, sunrise was at 6:03 a.m. and sunset was at 7:59 p.m. It would have become fully dark around 8:25 p.m., making it already pitch black while he was driving. When he arrived to Sprint Mart in Flowood, it was 10:18 p.m., completely dark. You can assume he was already tired and ready for the trip to be over. To leave Flowood to get to Jackson, it was only an estimated 15-minute drive. But in order to get to Jackson, you have to pass through several bodies of water, one being Pearl River. Pearl River in that area in which he would have traveled through is around 5 to 6 feet deep. Surprisingly, this is enough to sink, submerge, and carry away an SUV. It was late and it was dark. For LJ to mysteriously vanish, along with his vehicle, it makes you question everything and really look at the theories. So, the theories. I want to take a look at 5 burning theories that have been circulating around the internet. Some you may agree with and some you may not. So the first one, he committed suicide. One theory that I think is possible, but least likely, is that LJ committed suicide. Though there is no definitive reasoning as to why I think it's least likely, except that his family, his circle, and those that have come in contact with LJ have not reported him having any suicidal ideations or conversations that would lead one to think that he would have carried out such thing and a reason why. Honestly, there are many who die by suicide each year who don't show any signs or interest in doing it. In this case, would LJ drive that distance, stop at a convenience store, at a gas station, 15 minutes from his end destination, and commit suicide somewhere in between? I think this theory is least likely. The next one, theory 2. He started a new life. This is a possibility, but why? LJ was a grown adult at age 26. He had free will to start over. When starting life over, it's far easier to start over under the radar than to have your face plastered on the internet and search parties looking for you. Everyone's logic is different, but why would he drive that distance and inform people where he was headed, show up on surveillance just to start a new life close to the area in which he was sighted and planned on going? If anything, you would think it would be the opposite. We know school was tough because of his major, and we don't know how much about what was going on in his personal life, but we can assume that he did not choose to start his life over. Again, a possibility, but I think it's least likely. Theory 3. Fraternity brothers involved. This theory is one that has support as to why would one think this is possible. It is high up on my list of theories. It's odd that the frat brother lied and said that he did not speak with LJ the same night he went missing. They had an 8-minute long phone call. The conversation had to be about something. It could have been a discussion or simply a check-in call, as I've already stated. The question remains, why would he lie about this interaction? Was it out of fear that he would be accused of something? Or did him and LJ have a disagreement or a heated conversation, and because something happened to LJ, he did not want to be pinned to whatever occurred based on the last conversation? The best person to know what is going on in a person's life is themselves and God. We don't know how light or heavy the conversation got. There's a possibility that the frat brother could have told LJ to make a detour to meet them all somewhere. Maybe they had a change of plans. LJ decided to use the restroom so he wouldn't have to use the restroom at the location. You know, the new meetup location, if that's a possibility. Perhaps something happened at that new location. I would like to know the details in the last phone call, and why did the frat brother choose to lie? Not once, but twice. Then secure a lawyer. Surely there had to be surveillance videos of LJ driving in the direction of Jackson on his chosen route. Theory 4. Ties to Mexico. This is something that came up in my research. Some said LJ may have had ties to Mexico, but I couldn't find anything solid with how that was to be true. There were men who contacted LJ's mother and claimed that they had details on LJ. The men were speaking Spanish on the call and called from Mexico City, Mexico. So it was rather difficult for his mother to comprehend the details of the call. She was able to make out her son's name within the language barrier. They made a request for her to wire them money so they can release LJ. Well, his mother sent the money that the men requested, but it was sent to the wrong recipient, which caused some issues. The men called his mother back a few weeks later, and that was the last call from them. This could have been a lead, but it also very well could have been a prank. Oftentimes, as I've seen and just with my knowledge within this industry, families that have missing loved ones are often targeted for financial solicitation. People see families in the media and prey on them at a vulnerable and desperate time to have them send money, which drains the family's resources to put forth the efforts and financial stature to find their loved one. Law enforcement could not track down information or trace the calls. The calls have never been traced from Mexico, nor has anything ever materialized from it. The calls could have been a prank, or there could have been possibly some validity to it. It makes you question, if the calls were true, then how did LJ get to Mexico, and what occurred at the time of his disappearance, and how long before had this been in his shadows? An interesting theory, but it is something to keep in mind. Was this a prank, or could this have been a strong lead that unfortunately could not be traced? And Theory 5, the Pearl River. This is a common theory that continues to come up, that LJ could be in the Pearl River or any water source in the area in which he traveled that late evening. The thing about this is, there's a high possibility that LJ could have accidentally drove into a body of water. Now let me explain one of the many ways this could have happened. Reason 1. LJ realized he forgot his cell phone. We know that he left his cell phone at the Sprint Mart, seemingly by mistake. As dark as it was that evening, he could have panicked and was looking for his phone while driving. He could have been easily distracted and quickly drifted off into the water source. I doubt he fell asleep at the wheel, because with only 15 minutes to Jackson, he was able to exit his SUV, move his legs, and go into a store to use the restroom. This would have naturally woke him up, since he did take this short break then continued on. Number 2, anyone would panic if they think they lost their phone. He also could have remembered exactly where he left it and then wanted to hurry up and turn around before someone takes his phone. If he did make an attempt to do a U-turn, he could have drove off into the water source only for him and his vehicle to never be seen or heard from again. These are 2 reasonings I would see him accidentally driving off into the water. This is an explanation for why him nor his SUV would have never been seen again. If he did take the route passing through Pearl River, it was only 5 to 6 feet deep under normal flow conditions, which is enough to conceal even an SUV. This information isn't available, but if on January 11, 2010, there was a low period, which is 3 to 4 feet deep, it may have been easier to see his vehicle. If there was a flood stage, the water could reach well above 20 to 30 feet in depth. Pearl River on average is 5 feet deep. If he did drive off into the river, there typically would be tire tracks or disruption to nature, grass, bushes, or even a median strip, or some type of debris that would have surfaced by now. 15 years later. Of course, this is if these possible areas were even searched. There was also another water source, the Ross R. Barnett Reservoir, which has an average depth of about 12 feet, and that's 3.7 meters, and a maximum depth of around 35 feet, which is 10.7 meters, near the dam. It covers roughly 33,000 acres and serves as both a water supply and a recreation area for the Jackson metropolitan area. There were search efforts, but nothing ever materialized from it. Like every case, I was able to pull the weather archives in Flowood, Mississippi on and around January 11, 2010. I found out that the local region experienced a winter precipitation event around January 9th through 10th, 2010, with sleet and ice reported in the area. If this was still present on January 11th, especially with a freezing temperature of 19 degrees at around 10:18 p.m., this could mean that the ground may have had sleet on it, which would be a contributing cause of him to go off the road. Whether he panicked due to him remembering that his phone was left at the convenience store or just from the conditions. We also have to remember that he drove a 2002 Ford Expedition, which is an SUV and more prone to rollovers due to the design compared to smaller passenger vehicles. This is just something we don't know and unfortunately don't have enough context and evidence to support. My opinion. I remember when I first heard about this case back in 2012, 2 years after he went missing and 13 years ago. Still, no new developments, no new evidence, no new conversation, and no new media attention. I cover cold cases because they tend to be forgotten, especially when it comes to cases that are of the Black and missing. I set out to do a service for families so they can know that we have not forgot about their loved ones and we're still looking. When I look at LJ's case, I don't know which way to lean. I don't believe that he was involved into anything that would allow him to have connections to Mexico, but that doesn't mean that it's untrue. It's just something with limited amount of information that I have to work with. I have not seen, heard, or read anything in it to suggest he was involved with something behind the scenes. We have someone who was educated, attended school for engineering, seemed to have had great experiences with people he encountered, and always strive for his best. I just don't see this being in his makeup. But again, it doesn't mean that it wasn't there. This could have very well been a prank with the hopes to solicit money to a grieving mother who longs for the whereabouts of her son that she just seen hours before he vanished. The frat brother and this 8-minute call is an oddity. He didn't have to lie, but he chose to withhold this information for whatever reason. When he secured a lawyer, I don't know why or what made him want to move in that direction unless there was something there that law enforcement may or may not know. That conversation is important since it is one of LJ's last, if not the last conversation he had from his phone. We don't know if the call was incoming or outgoing. A call like that is one you just don't forget. I do wonder how many times were they in contact before the 8-minute call and the days leading up to January 11th. It's just something to keep in mind. I also wonder, did LJ have any animosity with anyone? This is possible, but as of now, it's just all speculation. One thing that did cross my mind when constructing this analysis: racial targeting. Let me explain. It was at night. He stopped at a very public area, a gas station, visibly a black man in Mississippi, entered his SUV and left into the night. Was he tailed and something happened? This ideology is one that did cross my mind, and I have to mention it because this is something I know someone else is thinking. Though possible, I'm not for certain this occurred. Why? We didn't see anyone leave after him within the frame of the surveillance footage, but someone could have followed him out of the gas station in their vehicle, outside of frame, possibly. Again, this is something law enforcement may have and holding close to the investigation. My theory, from looking at the case with the information that I do know, it appears that LJ accidentally left his phone in the restroom. We know that. He was tired and trying to finish those last 15 minutes of drive time to reach his end destination. He left in his SUV, made it up the road, reached for his phone to contact someone to let them know he was nearing Jackson, realized he either lost his phone because he could not locate it on him or in his car, or remembered where he placed his phone in the restroom and realized that he forgot to pick it up. Panicked because it's a chance someone could have taken his phone by then, lost control and possibly veered off into the water. This could be why his vehicle, nor him, were never found. I leave you with these questions. Why did LJ leave his phone in the bathroom? Was it by accident, or did he just simply not want to be found? If he drove that distance to see friends, then he would have needed his phone. How did the store clerk know the phone belonged to LJ? Did LJ not have a passcode on his phone, or was it traced by law enforcement from his location pings? Where was LJ supposed to be staying once he reached Jackson? What was his lodging arrangement? Has any of his articles of clothing been found or resurfaced since his disappearance? Who was his main point of contact upon his arrival to Jackson? Where else did he stop while en route to Flowood? He may or may not have stopped somewhere to get food and gas, since he didn't get either when he stopped at the Sprint Mart. What was the status of LJ's life and lifestyle during the time he went missing? What was the relationship between LJ and his frat brothers? Because it still makes me question, what would be the reason that the frat brother would lie about speaking with him on the night he went missing? Did he end up meeting them? Something went wrong? A tragic accident? Did he actually make it to Jackson? Has all nearby water sources been thoroughly searched and areas checked for skid marks, disturbance, or anything that would signify a possible accident? Lastly, can we see the full surveillance video footage of LJ? I leave you with these questions because it opens up dialogue and shows you that despite us having this case in front of us, there's a great deal of information that we just don't know. It allows you to analyze the case from a different angle than surface level and formulate your own opinion. We later learned that his apartment could not even be searched from what evidence that was present because his family had moved his belongings out of the apartment he shared with his roommate. As of now, nothing occurred at his apartment, but it still needed to be searched to see if there's anything relevant. The importance of the cell phone is extremely vital because this one element could have been used as evidence, which would have led to LJ's whereabouts or his last known whereabouts thereafter his sighting at Sprint Mart. We need answers. It's been 15 years. I'm sure if the Flowood PD could reanalyze this case and bring it back warm, we may can get answers to our questions and see this case closed with finding LJ. Either someone had a hand in this or someone didn't. The only people who know what happened are God and LJ, and if there is another party involved. Until people start talking, I'm afraid this case won't see any change. Hopefully, this analysis will spark someone's mind who may have traveled the same road with LJ on that cold evening on January 11, 2010, or seen something. We have to remember that though they say foul play was not suspected, we have to leave that door open, and we have to leave the door open that this could have been an unfortunate accident. I have a quote from one of LJ's classmates and friends. Quote, "Lester is one of the nicest, funniest, most genuine people I have ever come across. In school, he was always good for a joke and would do anything he could for anybody. If anyone can help find Lester and bring him home, they will have an eternally grateful community, not to mention myself, end quote. That quote was stated by Bryce Touchstone. Hopefully, we can get some answers soon. Remember, I'm just telling a story that I want to see solved. I pray LJ's mom is doing okay. Until then, this case will remain open, unsolved, and extremely cold, just as it was on that evening of this mystery. At the time of Lester's disappearance, he was 26 years old, stood at 6 feet and weighed 205 pounds. Lester is a male, African American, has black hair and brown eyes. Lester's nickname is his initials, LJ. He has the following tattoos: his initials LJ on his chest, the word Jesus on his back, a pit bull on his left arm, and the phrase, quote, "To live is to suffer, to survive is to find meaning in the suffering," end quote, possibly on his back. On that night, LJ was driving a 2002 blue Ford Expedition with Mississippi license plates KTW 714. Lester would be 41 today in 2025 and turn 42 on November 26. If you have any information or leads in the disappearance of Lester Raymond Jones Jr., his current whereabouts, or any information concerning LJ, it should be directed to the Starkville Police Department at 662-323-4134. I know someone holds the answers to this 15-year-long mystery. Whether someone had a hand in it or this was a terrible accident, this case can be solved. It just has to be looked at from all angles. Hopefully, LJ's family doesn't have to go another decade without answers. As always, please be safe, be vigilant, and always be aware of your surroundings. May God bless and keep you all. I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I now live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. Galatians chapter 2, verse 20.